Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon and our continued coverage of Horizons of Spirit Island. Once again, Horizons of Spirit Island is essentially kind of Spirit Island 1.5. Very similar to what Gloomhaven did when they came out with Jaws of the Lion. This is meant to be more accessible to a wider audience. Therefore, they have included a walkthrough that's going to walk you through your first round or so of the game to help get you started. And they highly recommend you utilize these power progression cards. Now you can find these in most Spirit Island, the base game, and I believe the expansions. This is essentially giving you a breakdown of the power cards that they feel you should gain as you continue to grow as a spirit. And if you want to use this, you would just simply set these aside, and then every time you gain a power card, you would gain the next one in order. So that's kind of what we've done here as part of the walkthrough, is set aside the ones that they are going to recommend we pick up first. Setup for the board is, there's a lot of stuff to put out, but it's very straightforward. And this board especially tells you everything that you need to set out. So this is the 3-player side of the board. You can see we're going to be playing with 3 spirits, and this game is very easily played multi-handed. So if you want to play solo, you can still control 3 players or 3 spirits like I'm doing now. You're going to set aside a number of blight based on, you can see here, 16 blight. Fear, you're going to put 12 fear here. Now that is dependent upon your player count. The other side of the board is an island for 2 players. And then you can actually play as a single spirit, so true solo. You would simply just mark off the one of the sections of the island, kind of reducing it in half, making it even smaller. You can see this one has these brown borders that cut through the middle here, are dividing the island into 3 main sections. All that means is that when you begin the game, you as a spirit need to pick a section to start in. So you can see here that my Fathomless Mud of the Swamp has started in this area. My Eyes Watch from the Trees has started up here, and Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot has started down here. To set up the initial Dalnan and cities and towns, you'll simply look at the map. You can see here, here's 2 Dalnan symbols, so I put 2 huts down. Here's a little town symbol, so I put a town down. Here's a larger symbol, that's for the city, so I put a city down, and then blight. So basically, you just look down on the board and you fill it up. After this, you can basically ignore the numbers and the symbols for the most part. You set up the board, then depending on the spirits that you choose, you're going to follow the setup guide. Now I've already put out the discs, which is part of setup, very straightforward because it's very tedious. But on the back side of each of these is a setup. There's a little background about the spirit, and then there's a setup. So for Rising Heat of Stone and Sand, it says here, put 2, and that's a symbol for presence, or the little wooden discs, on your starting board in the highest numbered sands. All right, so this is where the numbers come in. So for example, if you were playing as I'm going to call him the Flame Dragon here. If you were playing as the Flame Dragon and this was your area, this was your board, your section of the island, you would say, all right, the highest numbered sands, that would be 5 versus 3. There's only 2, so you would put 2 of your discs in this area. So based upon these 3 setups on the back of their card, we have gone ahead and placed these 2 discs here, these 2 discs here, and actually the Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot only gets 1. But again, that keeps everything balanced, and you basically don't have to do anything but follow the setup on the back of the card and then follow the setups where it says on the board. You're also going to create your fear deck up here, which is going to be 3 randomly drawn fear cards, then the level 3 terror card tucked sideways, 3 more, the level 2 terror card tucked sideways, and then 3 more. As we generate fear, so fear gets pushed down here, every time we reduce this pool down to nothing and everything's down here, we get to draw a fear card. Fear cards are going to benefit us as spirits. Remember, we're trying to scare off the colonies, the settlers, the invaders. Fear cards are going to benefit us, but also as we reach further down the pile, as we get to terror level 2 and 3, it actually makes the winning conditions easier. Right now, for us to win, we would have to clear off everybody. There could be no invaders on the board, no towns, and no cities. As you reach different terror levels, you can see here this one would be at terror level 2. You can have no towns and no cities. So if there's just people left on the island, that's okay. And then level 3 expands on that. The last thing as far as the board is concerned for setup, you're going to take your Invader deck. That's the set of smaller cards, and you can see they are numbered 2s, 3s, and you're basically going to, according to normal setup, you're going to randomize these, removing one from like the one pile. In this instance, for the walkthrough, they have told us to set up at least the number 1 cards in a very specific order, because again, they're going to walk us through the first like turn and a half of the game, so they want to be sure that the cards you flip over match the walkthrough. So this one has been set up very specifically, but otherwise it's random with all the 3s on the bottom, then the 2s, then the 1s with some removed. For your spirits, again, you're just going to pick a color. The color does not matter. But then you're going to put out your 13 discs here, which should cover up, most of your board. And then you're actually going to remove those, the first few, to place them out here. You're also going to pick up the 4 cards that are unique to your character. So you can see here, here's 4 for the Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. Here's 4 for Eyes Watch from the Trees. Then you have a deck of minor power cards, and you have a deck of major power cards. So these, the major and minor powers, can be used by any spirit. So each spirit has 4 cards unique to them, and then they all share the pool of major and minor power cards. And that's it. That is all you need for setup. Obviously, you want to have your the rest of your tokens off to the side, as well as these 3 tokens for each different character. This game, this version of Spirit Island, can only be played up to 3 players. It is a 1 to 3 player game, which is a little odd in my opinion. I don't know why they made that attempt. I guess because they didn't want to have 4 or 2 boards. They could have created a 1 player side, then a 2 player side, then a 3 player side, and a 4 player side. In the core game, in the original Spirit Island, there is no board like this. It's actually island pieces that if you're playing solo, you just put out 1 island piece. If you're playing 2 player, you connect 2 island pieces, and you can change how that shape looks. Whereas in this version, you're just getting 1 island, the same island every time. The last thing we are going to do for setup is to place out our initial invaders. Now, normally this would be completely random because you have randomized your Invader deck. But you can see there's 3 areas to this Invader section here. There's Explore, that's when we place invaders out onto the board. There's Build, that's when we put out cities and towns. And then there's Ravage, that's when we actually do damage to the Dalnan, to our presence, possibly Blight may come out as well. So as the game goes on, the cards are going to be rotating through these spots. So you'll actually be able to see what's coming up next other than Explore. Explore should always be random to you, but in this instance for the walkthrough, we actually know what it's going to be. So after you've set up everything else, the last step of setup is to flip over this top card here, and you're going to place an Invader, so one of these tokens here, in each location that is a wetland space, so it has to be blue, and it has to be adjacent to either a coastline, which is here, here, and here, or adjacent to a settlement, so a city or a town. So in this instance, this one here is adjacent to both of these, so it gets 1. This one has 1 in it, so obviously it's adjacent. These 2 are also adjacent and or have 1 in it. This one's adjacent to that. And this one is adjacent to the coastline, but it's also adjacent to these 2 right here. So essentially every wetland in this instance gains 1. This will not always be the case, so make sure you pay attention. Don't just flip this over and put an Invader in every wetland space. All right, other than that, we are set and ready to go. Again, knowing that this is here, we know that in the future, they're going to be building. Actually, at this point, I should flip this or push this down. We know that in the next Invader phase, they're going to build in the wetland spaces. We don't know where they're going to explore, and they're not quite going to ravage yet, but we'll get there. All right. After you have completed setup, we're going to move on to the spirit phase, specifically the growth phase. Okay, so during the growth phase, you're actually going to look up here at this top bar of each of your spirit placards, and it says here on each one you're going to pick one. So which one of these are you going to do? And depending on what stage you are in the game, you are obviously going to be picking ones other than the other, because none of them offer everything. There's never a situation where you're just going to pick the same growth action each time. So again, in the walkthrough, they have given you suggestions as to which growth action you should take for each of the spirits. So let's just go through those quickly. Devouring Teeth Lurking Underfoot. They say that you should gain a power. They suggest that you do the middle one, gain a power card, and add 1 presence. And this is add a presence at range 1. That means that you are going to put out a presence, and they recommend you can choose from either one of these. You're going to take the leftmost disc from whichever row you choose. This one is going to allow you to play more cards on your turn. This one is going to give you more energy on your turn. They recommend you do this one. All right, so you're going to take this disc, and it says to add it at 1 presence or 1 away. So that means you can actually place it either in an area that you have presence or adjacent. So we can see way over here that this is where we need to be. So any one of these here adjacent to us is a target. But it recommends we double up here, creating a sacred site. So even though it gave us at range 1, we're going to put it at range 0, which is perfectly fine. The other thing was gain a power card. And again, looking back here to our power progression card, it says we recommend Devouring Ants. So I'm going to go ahead and claim Devouring Ants and add it to my hand. So my hand for Devouring Teeth Lurking Underfoot now looks like this. It doesn't matter that the cards don't match, because this is not ever an instance where you're going to randomly play the cards out of your hand. You're always going to get to see all of them as long as they're in your hand, and play whichever ones you choose. Normally, when you're not doing a walkthrough and you're not using a power progression card, you would simply draw 4 from either deck and choose 1, discarding the others. The trick with, and some of you may ask, well, why wouldn't you always just choose the major power deck? Well, there's 2 reasons. 1, major powers cost more. So if you haven't built up your spirits to be able, your engine to produce more energy each turn, you're not going to be able to afford your major power cards. Also, if you claim a major power card, you actually have to remove a different card from your deck. So right now we want more choices. So we've chosen a minor power card, increasing our hand size to 5. If we had taken a major power card, we would have stayed at 4. All right, so that's your choice, but it is a balancing act you have to consider. All right, moving down to Eyes Watch from the Trees. They also recommend we choose the middle action here. So this one is add a presence at range 2 and add a presence at range 0. Now again, you can choose which order you do these, and they recommend to take 1 from each row. So we're going to pull these off to the side, and it recommends we come way over here, just to the left of our starting area here. And here, so this is our range 2. We didn't use the full range again, but that's fine. And the last one has to go either here or here because it's range 0. So we're going to go there. We now have 2 sacred sites for Eyes Watch from the Trees. And sacred sites can, for example, here you can see their innate power is a range 1 from a sacred site. So anytime you see the double stack of presence tokens with the flare underneath, that's a sacred site. So technically, some people stack theirs like this. I think that's harder to see. I like to have just 2 next to each other, but do with it what you will. Last but not least, we have Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. This one they actually recommend you doing the 3rd one here, and this one actually gives you 3 actions, which is nice, but you're not always going to want to choose that one. and I'll tell you why in just a minute, but let's focus on this one. First one is gain a power card. According to the power progression card for Fathomless Mud of the Swamp, it recommends Steam Vents. So we're going to take Steam Vents and add it to our hand. Next, we're going to add a presence at range 2. Okay, so this one actually, we're going to utilize the full range of our action. So at range 2, we can add a presence. Here we can see it's I got to be within 2 spaces of this particular spot. So I'm going to go all the way over here, 2 spots away, and go right there. I've now crossed this brown border, which is perfectly fine. I don't have to stay in my part of the island once the game has started. I just have to set up within this part of the island, which, you know, forces you to spread out, but that's a good thing. You wouldn't want all your spirits up and starting in one corner of the board, because the invaders would wreak havoc at the other ends. All right. The last thing this one gives you the option to do is gain 2 energy. Now this is 2 energy you're gaining during the growth phase. Okay, you're going to get more energy during the next phase, but this is like a little bonus. All right, at this point we've gone through all of the growth phases for our particular spirits. And again, I commented a second ago why you wouldn't always just choose these ideal ones, at least as far as this opening round. The biggest reason is, one, that each of these have one growth option that is reclaim cards. Okay, that's because every time you play a card out of your hand, and the amount of cards you can play, remember, is based on this bottom track here. So every time you play a card on your turn, whether it's during the quick phase or slow phase, they go to a discard pile, and you cannot use them until you have reclaimed them. So if nothing else, if you are very particular about one particular growth action, at some point you're going to have to use the reclaim action here to get your cards back, or you'll just have no cards to play, and that doesn't make for a very powerful spirit. All right. After you have grown your spirit, then you get to gain your energy. So again, and this is where we are looking at our top row, the highest number that we can see is the amount of energy that we're going to gain. So for Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot, we get 2 energy. For Eyes Watch from the Trees, yes, I can see 2 1s, but 1 is the highest number, so we get 1. And down here, we get 1, well, we got 2 during our growth phase. So this little otter guy actually has 3 energy. All right, very simple, very straightforward. Last but not least, we are going to choose the cards that we want to play. So we just looked at our top row here, looked for the highest number. Now we look to our bottom row. What's the highest number? This is the amount of cards that we can play. You don't have to play, but you can play up to that many cards. So let's start up here at the top. Devouring Teeth Lurking Underfoot. The walkthrough gives you recommendations for the 2 cards that they think you should play each time. So they recommend playing Devouring Ants and Gift of Furious Might. So that's these 2 cards. You can see up here in the corner that each of these cost 1 energy to play. All right, so I'm just going to put those down there, and I'm going to reclaim. I just gained that energy, but I've already spent it. You can see here that some of these cost 2 energy apiece, some cost 1. There are others that cost none, and here's one with none, and there are others that cost even more, like major powers. All right, for Eyes Watch from the Trees, they recommend Whispered Guidance Through the Night and Mysterious Abductions. So here is those 2 cards. These were both part of their starting deck. You can see this one is free, this one is 1, so I have to spend 1 energy to play these 2 cards. Last but not least, Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. They recommend playing Steam Vents and Open Shifting Waterways. So that's these 2 cards. You can see that there's 2 1s there, so this guy is actually going to have 1 energy remaining when this is all said and done. All right. For the next phase, where we start playing cards and taking actions There's actually two parts to that phase, with the Invader phase kind of splitting those up and taking place in the middle. You have your quick actions, and you have your fast powers and your slow powers. Your fast powers are going to be ones that have a bird symbol here under speed. Your slow powers are going to have a turtle. So that means I can play this card and do everything it says on it because I've already paid for it during the fast power phase. This card I cannot play until after the invaders have gone, but sometimes I can use that to my advantage. All of your creatures also, or all of your spirits also have innate powers here, and each of those innate powers has a speed. So you can see Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot is slow, whereas Eyes Watch from the Trees, their innate power is fast. In order to fire off your innate powers, you're going to be looking at the elements that you have gained along the left side of the cards you have played. Only the cards you have played, and only your cards. So in this instance, I have 1 yellow, 1 gray, 1 orange, 1 dark gray, and 2 red. In order to fire off my innate power, I would need at least 1 orange and 1 red. Okay, so I could do that one. But as you get down the list here, you can see that you need more and more resources, but your innate power becomes more and more powerful. So if I have 2 orange, 1 gray, and 2 red, I could fire off an even better version. I don't, but that's okay. This is a slow power anyways. And so now that we have declared the cards that we're going to play, again, we're going to move into the action phase. It's going to be the fast powers, followed by the invader phase, followed by the slow powers. So bird symbol, invader phase, turtle symbol. Let's zoom back out so we can see everything that's about to happen. Okay, one of the nice things about Spirit Island, it is a cooperative game, and each of your spirits are very asymmetrical from one another. So they're all going to be able to do different things. If you look on the back of your spirit board, along with setup and playstyle here, it's also going to tell you kind of where your spirit shines. So for this guy here, he is really big on offense, okay on control, not super great at building up fear, decent at defense, and he's a decent utility player, which means he can help out other spirits. With that being said, with all of your spirits being unique, all of you can take your turns at your leisure. There is no player order. It's just fast powers, invader phase, slow powers. So one spirit could take an action, then another, and then you could go back to this one, and then to the third one, and do a completely different player order the next round. So for the purposes of the walkthrough, they are giving us the recommended order to play things. So they recommend we start down here with our Fathomless Mud of the Swamp, and we're going to play Steam Vents. All right, Steam Vents is a fast action. It happens at a range 0, so we have to have presence in the same area that we want to do this, and the target land is any. So it doesn't matter where we do this as long as it's this is like a melee attack. There is no range. Then we work from top to bottom. In this instance, we get to destroy 1 invader. All right, well, we look here in this where our presence is, and we actually have presence here and here, both of which have invaders. They recommend taking this one out. All right, so we have destroyed 1 invader. That goes back to the supply. On the bottom here, it says if you have 3 mountain elements, you may instead destroy 1 town. Well, if we look back at both our cards that we play here, we see we only have 1 mountain element. So that bottom part of the card, we'll just have to wait until a later round. Okay, don't get rid of this card yet, but just make note that you have played it. Up next, we're going to go up here to our big sandworm, and we're going to play Gift of Furious Might. This one actually doesn't do any damage. It boosts another player. So this is a utility card. It's a fast speed. It doesn't have any range, which means it can be anywhere. You can target anyone. And the target is another player. So you cannot target yourself. It has to be another spirit. If you are playing true solo, however, anytime it says target another player, you can target yourself. It says here, target spirit may deal +3 damage this turn with one of its damage dealing powers. Okay, so we're going to target Eyes Watch from the Trees. That's going to be our target. And we just announced that, okay, you get +3 damage. There's no token to give them or anything like that. You would just simply remember. So we're going to come over here to Eyes Watch from the Trees. And we are going to play Mysterious Abductions. This is a fast card. It has a range of 0, so it has to be where we are. Remember, we are up here in this area, and target land can be any. So it doesn't matter what's in our land or what we're targeting. We're going to be able to do Mysterious Abductions there. Then we go from top to bottom. The first thing we're going to do is generate a little fear. So we go up here to our fear pool and drag one down into generated fear. Remember, once we have pulled all of these down, we're going to get to flip over a fear card, which is going to benefit us during the fear phase. And the more we get through this stack, the easier it's going to be to win. The last thing is we get to do 1 damage. Well, in this space, we actually only have natives, the Dalman. We don't want to damage them. But in this, we have a city. Well, cities actually have 3 health. So to completely get rid of a city, you would have to do 3 health to it. Simply doing 1 damage, you could flip it over. It's burning, but it would actually recover at the end of the round. But remember, Gift of Furious Might has given us +3 damage on our next damage dealing power. So we're going to take that. We're going to deal a total of 4 damage and destroy this entire city. Now, killing people doesn't get the invaders too fired up. It doesn't get them too scared. But taking out their towns and their cities makes them very afraid. So every time you take out a city, you generate 2 fear. All right. And so that was this fast power. The last thing we're going to be able to do is use Eyes Watch from the Trees, use their innate power. Okay. So we look back here at both cards that we've played. And these are the resources that we have generated, the elements. And it costs us 1 moon and 2 leaf in order to do at least the first level of innate power. If we actually had 2 and then 3, we'd be able to do the second level. Well, we have 2 and 2, so we're close, but we're not there. But we can still do this first level power. This is a fast speed power. It has to be range 1 from a sacred site, which means we have to have 2 presence at that site. And it has to target invaders. Okay? So where do we have invaders that are within range 1 of either of these 2? None for this one. But here, we can target this fella over here. All right? And so it says here, when you do this first level, you are creating 1 fear right off the bat. So we get to generate a fear. And we get to defend for 2. Well, defend is going to come in very handy when the invaders are actually ravaging. But at the first round of the game, nobody ravages. They're still making their way onto the island. So that defend 2 is technically just kind of wasted this round, but we still generated 1 fear. It didn't cost us anything to use this innate power, so we might as well push the fear down. All right. At this phase, we are finished with all of our fast powers. We've played all the fast powers that we can. We're going to move on to the invader phase. At the beginning of every invader phase, this is when we would first look to any fear cards that we have gained. We would flip them over and we would go through them top to bottom. Remember, these are going to actually benefit us as spirits. It's going to hurt the invaders, benefit us, may change up the rules a little bit, may change up the strategy you're having to do, but for the most part, it benefits you to have a fear card out. All right, we haven't got any, so we're going to skip that for now. Then you're going to go down here to your kind of invader board section, and normally you would move left to right. First, you would ravage. Well, they're not ravaging yet. There's no land type here, so we're going to move on to build. When you build, you only look in wetland areas or whatever land type is here, and you're going to put out cities and towns based upon what's already there. So let's just start here. In this one, there's only an invader. Okay, so they do have presence there. so they're going to put a town. Same thing here. Only have an invader, they're going to put down a town. There always has to be at least a town before you can build a city. All right. Here, they don't have anybody, but a city is only built if there's already a town, which means that any wetland on the island with any invaders of any type builds a building. So this one is actually free and clear. This one, however, already has a town. Okay, it's got an invader to build, and so we plop down a city. Now this one has an invader, so we'll plop down a town. This one actually already has a city. It was a starting city, and there will be situations in the future where you may say destroy a town, because you can, but you don't have the damage to destroy a city, so you leave the city. In this instance, you would actually build a town, because there's already a city there. Anytime that cities either are equal to or outnumber the towns, you build a town. It's only when towns outnumber cities that you build the city. Usually that's an instance where it's just one town. All right, so we are done with the build phase. Then we're going to move on to the explore phase. So this is where we don't know what's happening. In this case, we do, because we stacked the deck appropriately. So now they're going to explore in the jungle. Remember, explore is when these little people tokens come out. So again, they are looking to come in either from the coast or explore from a city or town. So this one is the coast. It's also adjacent, so it gets one. This one is adjacent. This one is adjacent, so we're going to squeeze this guy right there like that. This one is adjacent, so it gets one. This one is adjacent. It's also on the coast. And this one is adjacent. So every jungle space got an invader. Once you have gone from left to right, you're going to push everything down. So now we can see that in the next invader phase, they're going to ravage the wetlands, they're going to build in the jungle, and they're going to explore somewhere. All right. But at this point, the invader phase is finished. You can see, though, how things can start to steamroll out of control. This is very much a pandemic-esque system where the more presence they have on the board, the bigger and faster they start to grow. So it's your job to reduce all this stuff down as quickly as possible. Now we move on to the slow power phase. So this is any of our powers that have the turtle, so including innate powers or cards that we've played. Again, the walkthrough is going to give us recommendations on the order in which we should play these powers. So we're going to start with Devouring Ants here from our Sandworm. We can see here it's a slow power. Has to be range 1 from a sacred site. All right, so we actually have one. Our target can be any. All right, so our target's actually going to be this location right here. It's important that we've established this as our target, because in a second, as we go through here, you'll see that everything's going to kind of happen in this one spot. So we generate 1 fear. All right, this one comes down. That doesn't necessarily need to have a target. All right, we can do 1 damage. All right, so we can either take out this one invader, or we can do 1 damage to the town. I'm actually going to do 1 damage to the town based on the recommendation here. Okay, also, unfortunately, we have to destroy 1 Dalnun. Not all the spirits are super careful about the natives being underfoot, so we actually knock out a whole Dalnun there. If the target land was either jungle or sand, we would do an additional damage. It's not. It is a wetland. So this is where it's important to note that your target is a wetland, this one right here, not where you originated from, which was sand. But we have one more trick up our sleeve. Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot has a special rule, Territorial Aggression. Your damage dealing powers do +1 damage. All right, so that 1 damage now becomes 2. I can remove a town completely. That generates 1 fear. All right, we've now gone through his card. Next, we're going to look at their innate power. So again, we could go in any order, we could bounce around, even if it allows you could do simultaneous play. But in this instance, let's just stick to the innate power here. It's slow power, range 1 from presence, okay? And it says you have to target invaders, all right? So we are actually going to destroy one if targeted land. Target land is G5, okay? Okay, so we're going to start here, and we're going to target our, again, this same spot. So our target land is invaders. It's range 1 of where we have presence. And it says here we have the orange and the red. We already established that earlier. If you don't have presence in the target land, gather one of your presence. So there's 2 phrases in here that the gather one threw me for a little bit of a loop at first, but when it's explained this way in the rule book, the full rule book does a good job of that. The walkthrough, not so much. Gather is like pull in, pull towards you. So whatever the target site is, you're going to pull from there. Whereas push, whatever the target site is, there has to be that in the target site, and you're going to push it to an adjacent site. So in this instance, we don't have presence in the target site, which is this wetland right here. So we're going to gather, pull in one of our presence. Okay, and that's it. That's all we can do because we don't have more elements to spend. Otherwise, we could keep going down this list here and doing all of these rows. All right, next we're going to jump all the way down here to Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. And the first thing we're going to do is play our Open Shifting Waterways. This is a slow power, range 1 from our presence, and the target is any land. Okay? Now in this case, we're going to gather, so pull in up to 2 dolmen. So we don't have to pull that full amount, but we can choose to. So in this instance, our target land they are recommending is H1. Okay? So this is our target land. It is within range 1 of our presence. Okay, so we can target this land, and we're going to gather 2 dolmen. So we're actually going to take 1 from here and 1 from here. Okay, so we're kind of moving the natives around, getting them to pick up and move, because natives actually fight back. After invaders ravage them, they can actually do damage back during the invader phase. So there's now 3 dolmen in this location. So we look down at the bottom of the card and it says if there are dolmen and invaders are present, here's one right here, you get to generate 1 fear, boom, and 1 damage. So this guy is now gone. All right, and you can see how quickly now we're still in the first round of the game, but we are more than halfway, having generated all of our fear, or generated enough fear to get our first fear card. All right, next we're going to look at the innate power of our Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. So looking back here now, you can actually see that we have 1 moon, 2 blue, and 1 mountain. So we can actually come all the way down here to this second row, but you always start with the first and then add into the second. So we know we can pay for the second one. So it's a slow power. It has to be range 1 of a sacred site. So we have 2 things here. That's a sacred site. And you have to target a land with invaders. All right, so we could target this one or this one. They recommend we target this one here with the blight. So it says move 1 from the origin sacred site. So we actually have to break up our sacred site to the target land. That's the first line here. So we have done that. We've actually broken up our sacred site, but it told us to do it. It also says this is required. You cannot skip this phase. All right, then moving on to line 2, we get to generate 1 fear. Here we go, producing more and more fear. Spread all this down there. Deal 1 damage and push 1 dolmen. So we can actually damage, take out this invader. At this point, we could push one Dalnan, but there is no Dalnan in our target area. Remember, push, the object has to start in your target area and you push adjacent. Gather, it has to start adjacent and you pull it in. So we cannot push this Dalnan. There's no Dalnan in our space. So we just kind of skip over that part. The last thing we're going to play here is from Eyes Watch from Trees, and that's going to be Whispered Guidance Through the Night. This is a slow action. It has to be in a jungle land where we have presence. So we're actually both of our sacred sites are in jungle lands. So we could go from one from here or one from range of one from here, and target land can be any. Okay, so we are going to gather up to 3 Dalnan. So that means, remember, gather is pull in. So they have to be adjacent to our target site, and we pull them in. So in this case, we're going to choose this as our target site, and we're going to pull up to 3. So 2 from here, and 1 from here. Okay, we now have 3 Dalnan in this location. So it says if invaders and Dalnan are present, they are, we get to generate 1 fear. Boom, we are so close to doing our first fear card. At this point, though, we have played through all of our slow powers, both innate and powers on the cards. So at this point, we enter the time passes phase. Spirit Island thematically is supposed to take over years. Generations are supposed to go by between rounds. That gives invaders time to build up their cities and towns, explore the region. Dalnans are going to come and go. Spirits grow slowly. So think of time passes, which is essentially a cleanup phase as those generations going by. If you have anybody that took partial damage, say a Dalnan or a town at this point, which took partial damage but was not completely taken off the board, they actually heal. They're going to go back. The reason you can flip these over and show that they are damaged is because one player may come in and say, all right, I've damaged a town, but another player would come in and say, ooh, I can do 1 damage to this guy and get rid of it. Same thing with the Dalnan. So at this point, we are going to discard our cards. So each player would need to have a discard pile. We're going to put ours over here. Boom, boom, and boom. That means these cards are not available for us to play during the next round. We can only choose from the cards we have still here in front of us until we take the reclaim action, which is when we get all of these cards back. All right. And that's going to do it for the first round of play and for the walkthrough for Horizons of Spirit Island. This pretty much gave you everything you need to know to be able to then take it on from here and play the second round and beyond. The rule book actually does a really nice job of, it has a glossary index, has a little lore, but there's also some tips and tricks, basic strategy on this side. They cover game concepts into more detail, as well as, say, giving you examples of building, exploring, and ravaging. More sequence of play here, detailed game setup. So once you have played through the walkthrough, if you still don't get it, everything that you have questions about should be found in the main rule book. But the walkthrough, I feel like, does a really good job. I think there was 1 or 2 pictures that I don't think were picturing the right step, or they got the picture wrong. But I don't really want to call those typos, but they threw me for a little bit of a loop. But it's pretty much, as long as you follow the text, you should do just fine. And that's going to get you played through your first round of Horizons of Spirit Island. Hopefully this gave you guys some insight into A, how to play Spirit Island, and B, lets you figure out if this game is worth it for you. If you're a veteran Spirit Island player, are these spirits something you would like to pick up? Is having the board pre-built and everything on one board something you would like to have? Or is Spirit Island something you've always considered and it's either too pricey for you at its current price point, or seems too complicated and you would like to have a simplified spirits and a walkthrough to help get you through it? If either of those, the answer to either of those questions is yes, then I would definitely recommend Horizons of Spirit Island. It's a very nice entry price point, and you can actually expand from here. You can play other spirits in this version of Horizons of Spirit Island. So you could actually pick up an expansion and utilize it. Again, this version of Spirit Island only allows up to 3 players, so you couldn't play it. You could not play a 4-player game without picking up the base game, and I believe you can go even to a higher player count with some of the expansions. Don't quote me on that, but you can expand from here if you really enjoy this game and just want to, say, try out some more spirits or some more mechanics that an expansion might offer. So again, I think this is a really nice entry point into Spirit Island. I had played Spirit Island the app form, but I had never actually played the physical copy. So this is actually technically my first jumping into Spirit Island, and I have enjoyed it so far. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. And once again, if you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.